afternoon. I'm Carol here from Sunset Learning Institute. I hope you all are good and welcome to our session. I'm here with John, our specialist that will share about some updates for us.
Okay, good morning, everybody. Thank you very much for joining us here at Sunset Learning Institute for our Tech Talk today. Our Tech Talk today is going to be on what's new in Cisco ACI. We've got architecture enhancements, automation, multi-cloud strategies, some security stuff. I've got some demos. We've got some really great stuff for you today. Let's go ahead and talk about our agenda. So, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to introduce myself and Sunset Learning. And then also, I want to make sure that we start diving right into architecture, right? So the ACI 6.0 architecture enhancements are really, really cool. Some of the things like um, the fabric doesn't actually have to be locally connected, right? We'll talk about that here in a second. Automation tools and operation simplification. I cannot wait to show you folks the Nutanix integration, right? I know we've heard a lot about that. Let's go ahead and talk about it. Multi-cloud strategy. This is something that Cisco's been working on, oh geez, since like the 3.0 days. Google Cloud Platform, Azure, AWS, right? Let's take a look at some of those new multi-cloud strategies. Also, security enhancements. I've got a couple of things in there. One of the biggest things is really how the communication of the 9Ks work. So we'll talk about that. Oh, also, Nexus dashboard integration. So we essentially have the ability to manage a lot of these components over here on the Nexus dashboard side, which is really, really neat. And then the last thing is, what are you folks going to do after this tech talk? Right? What are some things that we can take a look at, like dcloud demos, for instance, or the DevNet for API calls and just some simulated labs, right? And then also, of course, some things about Sunset Learning, which would be a very fantastic next step. So, with that being said, let me go ahead and jump into the next. Oh, I'm sorry, my introduction. Excuse me. Um, One moment. Excuse me. So, my name is John Gardner. I am at Sunset Learning Institute. I've been here for about 5 or 6 years. So about 6 years now. So I've been working with application-centric infrastructure since 2016, essentially when it came out. 1.0. I was doing road shows across the country for ACI. I think that was the 3.0 days, so like 2018, 2019, somewhere around there. So I've been working with Cisco ACI for a very long time. Application-centric infrastructure has been my bread and butter for a very long time, and I very much love it. So with that being said, enough about me. Start talking about these architecture enhancements. So the first thing that I want to show you is the virtual APIC 6.0. Now we are in a 6.03 right now. That's the newest revision. 6.02 we usually say is going to be the stable revision. Um, so with that being said, the virtual APIC, this is something where originally we were looking at whenever you add a APIC or I'm sorry, when you get on an APIC and you add the leafs and the spines, usually those have to be directly connected. They have to be connected in your environment. Right now, what we can do is we can deploy a virtual APIC that is not a physical APIC that's plugged directly into the network. So I don't need a physical APIC. No configuration limitations. It's going to act exactly like that old school APIC that we're used to seeing. So if you want fabric policies through this virtual APIC, absolutely deploy those fabric policies. Access policies, huge, right? For interfaces, to be able to attach devices to the fabric. All that stuff is still here in the APIC. Limitations are not able to run applications such as Elam and Policy Explorer. Okay, right? Um, that is one thing with the virtual APIC. Again, remember, this is virtual APIC. We can't instantiate every single feature switch directly, as usual, or they can be connected via an L3 out. If you're not familiar with an L3 out, this is your layer 3, or essentially your routed link from the ACI fabric out to a destination network. So during the initial setup, what you'll do is you'll set up an L3. And in here, this is supposed to say figure one. Um, in this figure, there's actually a whole nother side to this where we can actually bring up an APIC cluster that is not directly connected, and it actually says connected via an L3. With that being said, yeah, it's fully functional APIC, can manage up to 200, and it can also be deployed within AWS with the 6.0. Now, what I wanted to do real quick is let me see if I can't share out some content here. Excellent. So, one of the first things I wanted to do was I wanted to go here to the fabric. By the way, if you haven't been in the APIC lately, the interface looks exactly the same as it always has. We've got a couple of new things since the 3040 up until today's apps and integrations. So the first thing that I want to talk about here is going over to the fabric. So whenever we want to add a new cluster, add a new fabric, the first thing you folks are always going to do is you're going to go here to the fabric tab and go to inventory. Now, here, this is a really fantastic way to start identifying how we're going to add a new device. It even goes through the fabric delivery process. But what's nice is you can add a pod or you can add a remote leaf. This is what we're talking about in the AWS cloud. I can instantiate a remote leaf and then add that here to this physical APIC. And then vice versa. We can now have a virtual APIC with physical devices. So first thing that I wanted to show you, I also want to go through here in the topology. We do have kind of a summarization of what the actual fabric looks like. So we have a pod, we have our three controllers, and we've got a couple of spines and a couple of leaves. Now, the thing is that when you want to add, since we're talking about adding a virtual environment, inside the virtual APIC, you're going to want to go to Fabric Membership, and then you can register these nodes. Now, you may see nodes pending registration, something that's directly attached. In a physical APIC, you're going to see anything that is directly connected to the APIC, so the leaf nodes. You'll be able to see them. You just double click on it, give it a node ID. Let's go over here. If you give it a node ID and a node name, it pops right up onto the fabric, which is a beautiful thing. So, with that being said, let me go ahead and stop sharing here. And let me go back here. So, for the architectural enhancements, what I wanted to do is first show you what one of the new things is, right? With the ACI 6.0, here's our virtual APIC. But we also have some other architectural enhancements. Let's go ahead and talk about that here really quick. So as you can see here, unified fabric. And the unified fabric can be either physical, like what we've been working with, virtual, or get this. Here's another one that I haven't talked about yet. This can be deployed as a containerized system. That's pretty neat, right? We also have increased scalability and policy scale. And then we also have the Nexus 9K. If you give me a moment, I'll be talking about that. And then also fabric profiles for ACI, multi-site. One of the biggest things that came out really, honestly, I know I always talk about the 2 or the 3 and the 4 days, but that was a pivotal point in the ACI, right? ACI multi-site, multi-pod, we started developing that 1.2.3.0. Today in 5.0, we actually have a fabric policy that you can deploy to simply create the ACI multi-site. So now all you have to do is deploy a policy in multi-site. One of the things that is going to be important is actually, let me go back to our Chrome window here. And one of the biggest things is when you create an access policy, or well, technically you need to create a fabric policy here, and then you would create a whole new pod configuration. And then inside that pod configuration, you would have to also create leaf interface policies that are going to create the L3 out to your ACI multi-site. I do apologize. I don't have a lot of time to create all of that stuff. There's a couple of boxes involved here to configure it. But one of the things is it goes through all of this information, right? So under this what's next, let's go ahead and configure an interface, right? So we can pop in here. It's going to give you all the information about creating an interface. Okay. All right. And by the way, here, this is where you would assign that access port policy, essentially your VLANs and your interface configuration. We're going to pop those two together. Attachable entity profiles, right? Now, another thing that I wanted to show you is whenever you folks jump into the APIC for the first time, and you should be getting this up. Hold on a second. One moment. Close these out here. Whenever you folks jump into your APIC for the first time in 6.0, let me go ahead and log in here really quick. Oh, okay. Hold on a second. It saved my session. That's not what I wanted. All right. That should work. Okay. I guess it didn't. There's usually a getting started, but you can also go here to the question mark and click what's new. This is going to bring up all of the new features that are available in the APIC. What I wanted to focus on here was, first of all, our hardware. Let me make sure we're sharing that. Yep. So the first thing is our hardware. So the 9408 ACI Leaf or Spine. We also have the 10 gig copper version, the 108. This one's been around for quite some time, but we're also supporting the 10 and 20 fabric extenders. They are a little smarter switches, but the fabric extenders, they're now in ACI mode, right? In ACI mode, it allows us to instantiate policy, 10 gig, 100 gig. As you can see here, we can also get two 4 by 100 gig optics, which is pretty neat. The other thing here is the scalability. This is probably what you folks want here. Let me see if I can't post that into the chat window for you folks. Let's see. Awesome. So these are some of the newer features that are available with the scalability and architecture. Another thing is, we already talked about the virtual APIC, but we also have, again, the AWS cloud. We have TACAX accounting, L3 multicast. Again, this is going to be big for your multi-site. And we also have BGP. Now, BGP has been around, multi-protocol BGP has been around for a long time, right? The multi-protocol BGP autonomous system is in charge of injecting inside or outside routes and advertising internal routes to external networks. So if you haven't seen that before, it's really neat. What you're doing is essentially configuring to make sure that we can exchange routes with an external environment. So what we've done is we've enabled or updated the multipath piece of external BGP and also gave some more paths. Uh, if you have time, go ahead and look at that. This is really neat for your, again, your multi-site. Um, we also have virtual machine management domain first hop security, which is pretty neat. So the rest of the stuff, if you want to go through, you're more than welcome to. Another thing is there is an online YouTube video that's going to describe all of that. Let me pop that into the chat window just so you folks have that. This is everything that you would need to know for Nexus Dashboard, APIC, Service, Day 2 Ops, Kubernetes. That's another one, folks. If you haven't worked with Kubernetes, right? By the way, we do support that right now. I do want to show you really quick. When I click out of here, if you guys go to virtual networking, these are all of the newer versions of virtual machine management domains that we support right now. Traditionally, it was Microsoft, VMware, right? But right off the bat, I can add a new Kubernetes virtual machine management domain if I want to. Over here, if you want vCenter, right? What you'll do is add create a vCenter domain. If I want Microsoft, I'll create a System Center. I can't say that. System Center Virtual Machine Management Domain. SCVMM. Okay, I can say it correctly. But one of the things that's kind of been lingering in the background for a while is the OpenStack and OpenShift. Folks, if you have not seen the Open Initiative, this is absolutely phenomenal. What we're seeing more and more, and I don't mean to go on a side tangent here, what we're seeing more and more with ACI is or just with Cisco in general, is we want our environments to be something that's more open to other vendors, right? We've been hearing about that single pane of glass for 30 years, right? I think we're finally getting pretty close to having that single pane of glass, either from networking with the application policy infrastructure controller, or it could be compute with your Intersight dashboard, right? Or Nexus dashboard, which we're going to talk about here in just a minute. But we are getting closer and closer to that single pane of glass because of this open shift or open daylight or just open initiative. By the way, OpenStack, this is again, this is a virtual machine management domain. So we have a ton of different options here. I haven't worked with RKE, but if you have it, you can integrate it. All you have to do is really set up the essentially the credentials and the IP to get to the VMM domain, and then you should be able to see it inside of your APIC. So, all right. So let me go ahead and move on to the next piece here, folks. So that takes us to automation tools and operational simplification. This is all about Nutanix. AHV. So if you have now worked with Nutanix, the Acropolis Hypervisor, and AOS, the Acropolis OS, with Nutanix, what we're doing, I'm sure you heard about the partnership roughly about a year ago that we started working on. What we're trying to do is bring some of the best of breed here with your hyperconverged infrastructures and combine them together. I want the best network possible with Cisco ACI, and then I want some of the newer features and advancements that Nutanix brings to the table, such as creating a new Nutanix cluster and using things like Nutanix Move to actually move VMs from one cluster to another, for instance. If we have a cluster go bad, I can show you, in a class that we're developing, shameless plug, uh, by the way, side note, moving forward, we are looking at developing a Nutanix course that is going to live on UCSX. So if you're interested in that, please let us know. We'll give you times and dates. But using Nutanix Move to be able to move VMs from one Nutanix cluster to another. So what is Nutanix? What we're doing is we're supporting the Prism Manager. So Prism is kind of like vCenter, right? Prism is where I deploy my data stores, I spin up virtual machines. So, oh, and also kind of important, this is where you create your clusters. Very, very important. So the APIC, what it can do is it can simply authenticate, as the APIC has always done with third-party integrations. It's just going to simply log in and authenticate to that Prism manager. Now, you can see right here, yeah, integrates with that. This is the big thing. This integration provides virtual and physical automation and VM endpoint visibility. Here's the thing, folks. We're not really creating VMs here. This is giving us the visibility to optimize our network environment based on our virtualized Nutanix environment. This is going to give you end-to-end network automation. The biggest thing, though, is visibility. The first thing is I do want to show you the visibility part. And then what we'll do is we'll get into some of the integrations because this is more of a broader thing, right? So let's go ahead and share this out. One moment. Hold on a second. Give me 1 minute. Oh, I know what I'm doing. Here we go. All right. So one of the neat features that's been around for a while that we've updated is your operations tab. Now, this is really neat. If you folks haven't seen this before, this is amazing. One of the things that you can do is, okay, we've got visibility and troubleshooting. This is going to essentially map or locate a device on the fabric. Okay. Um, if I go here, I can see my capacity right now. So this is our full fabric capacity. You've probably seen this before. This is incredibly important for optimization and capacity planning. Now, this right here, endpoint tracker and visualization. These two things are incredibly important. They allow us to identify, let's give you a use case here really quick. Let's say that I have a machine, a virtual machine over here living in Nutanix. I've got that Nutanix integration. Guess what? I can find that endpoint right here in the virtual machine, or find the virtual machine's IP V4 or V6 address, MAC address, and the name. We'll see all that information here. But then you also see a visualization. So what it'll do is it'll actually show you here, which we don't have it set up yet, but it will show you the atomic timers. And actually, I wonder, probably can't do that yet. Nope. But the atomic timers is going to show you the latency and essentially the speed of the fabric in a visual representation from end to end. That is super important. Again, for capacity planning. Now, another thing that I want to show you is we have these two options here, apps and integrations. Now, the first thing is the apps. Now, what I usually do is I am going to click on download application. Now you can download like a third party application to your local machine and add that application. Please keep in mind that this is adding from your local machine here, right? This would be adding. So if I click download application, what it's going to do is take you to the App Center. And by the way, let's post that in the chat window. This is incredibly important. So let me go here. Brad, I absolutely do, boss. So Brad, yeah, if you can give me a couple of minutes, I'll go ahead and pop through a couple of fun things with ACI. So let's first talk about this integration here really quick. So in the chat window, I did drop the DC App Center. And one of the things that I wanted to show you here is we have, for instance, all of this Nexus dashboard stuff. I'm going to go over that in a little bit because we do have integrations here that I'll talk about. But we also, under integrations, I'll talk about that in a minute, but you create a group and then you add um, so then you add an integration here like vManage or UCS Manager, right? Here I don't have UCS Manager, but I can create the integration. And then I can also throw in here, again, integrating with natively with UCS Manager and vManage. Now the apps, here's something really neat. If I wanted to, I could say, let's go to Nexus Dashboard Orchestrator or NDI, right? Yeah, I could go here to Nexus Dashboard Insights. This is going to show me all of the detailed information of what we're going to see inside here. So for instance, with Nexus Dashboard Insights, I can now see my leaves. Holy cow. So if you like working through the Nexus Dashboard, that's totally fine, right? If your deployment has an APIC and NDO, NDI, right, Nexus Dashboard, then you can absolutely see that. We can share that information between the Nexus Dashboard and the APIC. So I just really quickly wanted to go over that. Okay. All right. And by the way, we can go here to downloads. I don't have any currently, so awesome. All right. Let me go ahead and stop sharing here. So Brad, yeah. One of the things that that was just kind of a bear in the past. Speaking of automation tools, operational simplification, all of that stuff. One of the things was really hated doing those ASAV integrations, right? All right. So one of the things with the integration is the ASAV. So we used to be able to deploy L4 through 7 services with an ASAV package, essentially, where if I deploy this ASAV, all I have to do, for instance, spin up a virtual ASA in vCenter and attach it to my VMs. I can use the APIC to then control that L4 through 7 service or that ASA itself. Um, that was kind of a pain. So if I go back here to Chrome, so one of the things that we used to do here is you would create a VMware VMM domain, right? And then what you would do is you would go to your tenants, and I'm just going to go to my test tenant. And if you go to services right here, oh, this is so important, folks. Let me link you to this here, folks. I know where the chat window is, I promise. There we go. All right. So, best practices and how to avoid some of the issues. One of the first things is anytime I jump in, you saw right here, the L4 through 7 services. Okay, there we go. When I click on L4 through 7 services, I used to just right click here and say, hey, let's create an L4 through 7 device. Then create a template, right? And deploy the service graph. Then what we would do is we would then deploy that in a contract. So I would go here to my contract, I would go to policies, and then let's see here, down at the bottom, this is where I would then apply. Here we go. This is where I would apply my L4 through 7 service. Sorry about that. Cisco's always moving things on me, I tell you. So right now I don't have a service graph. But long story short, the reason why I bring this up is when I click on L4 through service, L4 through 7 services, Brad, one of the things is they have the best practices right here. So when I click on ACI best practices, I increase the volume so you can see it. There we go. This is going to show you prereqs, overview, examples, all fantastic stuff, Brad. So I just really quickly want to show you again, if I go here to like, let's say virtual networking, you don't really see that. Um, excuse me. But for our most of our devices or most of our tabs here, you're going to see a quick start. This is going to show us, for instance, how's about adding the remote leaf? Who's ever wanted to add a remote leaf, right? Inside of our virtualized infrastructure. Hey, look at that. My old school multi-site, multi-pod slide, right? So this is showing you all of those best practices, Brad. Very good question. Thank you very much for asking. I'm going to go ahead and jump back in here. Where are we at on time? Oh boy, we got 20 minutes. All right. Let me jump into the next thing. So again, with automation and orchestration, we are seeing just deeper integration with like Terraform and Intersight. For me, I also teach the UCSX deployment workshop using Intersight and deploying Nutanix on Intersight. Um, this is absolutely phenomenal. The ability to have this full dashboard for compute and this full dashboard for networking, that's just the bee's knees to cat's meow for me. Also, configuration validation. So one of the most important parts about application-centric infrastructure is that it is an intent-based environment. What I mean by that is you create a policy that you intend for something to happen. For instance, I'll create a policy that puts all web traffic on VLAN 70. Now, intent-based networking means that we create a policy with our intention, and the fabric then instantiates that intention based upon the traffic that it is seeing. Okay, so what we're doing is now we're validating that the intent-based policy or intent-based configuration that you are deploying is actually valid on the fabric that you have. Right? Very important. We've also got some new day two operations. We'll be talking about Nexus Dashboard NDO here in just a minute. And then real-time telemetry and health scores. The real-time telemetry, that's actually the endpoint tracker and the visibility. We can absolutely get some really tasty real-time info from those two. So next, I gotta start moving forward. I apologize. So our multi-cloud strategies. So one of the things is we've been working on the integration with AWS, Google Cloud Platform, and Azure. One of the biggest advancements that we're seeing here now is these VZ innies and the L3 out to L3 outs. These are a VZ innie allows me to create essentially a group of devices that allows us to create a group of devices, or I'm sorry, a group of contracts, excuse me, um, inside of your ACI deployment. And actually, they're technically endpoint groups. And so what you're doing is essentially when you create an endpoint, you're grouping, let's say, all of my web servers. Now what I can do is I can create a VZ ini for my Azure, AWS, and Google Cloud Platform, put them together in a VZ ini endpoint group, I guess you would call it. Uh, and now I can create a contract between these three and an endpoint group. It used to be that we only created a contract between two endpoint groups. Let me give you a visual representation of what I'm talking about here. So if I go back here, to tenants, here we go. If I click on my tenant, what we can see here is we've got our dashboard, policy, operational, stats. One of the things is this is all the summarization for our tenant. But if I go here to my application profiles, what I wanted to show you is that there is an EPG that we can create. For instance, if I expand this, you can also see the application network profile and the topology. There we go. If I slim this down, what we're seeing here is usually you are going to map an endpoint group through a contract to another endpoint group. What we're doing is we're grouping EPGs together into essentially an endpoint group of its own called a VZ any that allows us to have multiple EPGs uh, on the other side of a contract, which is very, very important. This is going to streamline your configuration and make it a lot easier. So, for instance, I could create a VZ any that would just be for my cloud deployments, as an example. So, so let's pop out of there here real quick. So we still require an EPG to EPG subnet. In other words, I still have to have layer 3 reachability between the Cisco APIC and our cloud deployments. So I think that kind of goes without saying. Let's go ahead and jump here into some of the future updates. So again, the ACI Anywhere. This has been around for a long time. We're just increasing the support for virtual use, virtual APICs in AWS, Azure, and Google Cloud Platform. Consistent policy across on-prem and cloud. So we can deploy a application network profile for our standard 3-tier application, web, app, and database, whether it's in AWS or it's on-prem. We also have cloud native support and, well, MSO has been around for a long time, right? Multi-site orchestrator. But one of the things that we did is we essentially increased our um, our deployment methods for orchestration. Excuse me. All right, some security enhancements. So one of the things that we've had for a long time again is our microsegmentation. So microsegmentation, what I can do here, folks, is I can go to a application endpoint group here, right? So let's say this one's web, right? So I have an application endpoint group. What I can do is I can also create now micro segmentation, which is really neat. So what this allows me to do is now, instead of having a single EPG for web, I could create smaller, more granular groups based upon, let's say, operating system, right? So one is running Apache, one is running IIS. So I can have a web EPG with two micro-segmented EPGs and have completely different policy for over here on the IIS servers and over here on the Apache servers. So micro-segmentation has been a big thing. It's just a lot easier to go create it now. So when you go to create that micro EPG, give it a name. This might be IIS, right? The only other thing that you have to do, you're always going to have that L2, L3 connections, right? I've got to be able to see the subnet that I'm trying to granularly segment or micro segment. So again, we would go here to the tenants, application EPGs, and then we would here, this is, for instance, one of the EPGs. If I expand it, one of the neat things is you can also extend that EPG into a virtual machine management domain. But here's your EPG members. This could be a IIS server, and this could be an Apache server. So what I can do is I can now go down here and create a micro segmentation. Here we go. And say, I'm going to segment the web tier into IIS and Apache. Here's where I would create that micro segmentation. Sorry about that. I guess I was not sharing. Okay, let's go back here. All right. So another thing is we've got integration with our firewall threat defense, FTDs, right? And FMCs, right? So the firepower threat defense has been, again, it's been around for a while, but the integration, that's another thing, Brad, since you asked. The integration with the FTD, as opposed to the ASA firewalls, is much simpler and much easier moving forward. So we really liked that. Contract enforcements with endpoint learning improvements. So the endpoint learning improvements, when we go here to our application EPGs, in each one of these EPGs, I can click on the members. I can also expand to see statically and dynamically learned EPGs, right? It looks like they assigned these two static EPGs or endpoints. So if I click here, what we should be seeing is some information here, but I don't think the interface is up right now. But this is going to give me detailed information about that device out port 1/14 on VLAN 2000 node 101. So it will give us detailed info. Unfortunately, it doesn't have it here. So I do apologize for that. Let me show you that here really quick. So again, if you go here to the endpoint, and then you go over here to EPG members, static, dynamic. This is where we would dynamically learn endpoints inside the endpoint group. So this would be all of our web servers, for instance, if this was web EPG. Okay, next. So a couple of other things here. So whenever you get some time, go ahead and take a look at the 9K secure arrays. We've also got SAML and OAuth 2, TLS 1.3, first hop security for VMM domains. This is a big one. We didn't have that before, and it's just nice to know who you're talking to when you're reaching out to a virtual machine management domain. There's your TACACS for external logging. We also have 4096 support and X509 certs for RSA. And the other last big thing that I want to talk about here is the Nexus dashboard integration. I don't have a Nexus dashboard on me right now, but if you go here to apps, for instance, again, what I can do is I can go to my Nexus dashboard insights. I can view all of this great information, but here's the thing. What I wanted to also do is show you developer.cisco.com. So this is our integrations, excuse me, and this is going to be for development. I don't know how I keep missing that. My apologies. Let me share out my screen here. Here we go. So here's developer.cisco.com. This is our DevNet. Let me go ahead and pop that into the chat window for you. That is spelled correctly. All right. Developer.cisco.com. So check this out. What if I just go here and say Nexus dashboard? What happens? Holy smokes, look at that. When I click on Nexus dashboard, this is going to give us a ton of stuff, right? Here's the functionality, visibility and analytics, getting started with Python, for instance, automation, fabric management. This is all from a Python perspective and development. So I'm actually going to pop this here into, oh, I guess I have been sending that to the host. Anna, if you can re-share all of those links for me, I'd really appreciate it. My apologies on that.
Yes, I am. It's just the last one. The
Apparently,
other one is for everyone. Worse.
okay. All right. Very good. Thank you. I think I accidentally scrolled down with my scroll or mouse button. All right. There we go. So here's the Nexus dashboard integration. Look at this. How's about multi-site orchestrator? We've got blogs that we can read. One moment. Okay, that sneeze was not a false alarm. All right, so we do have some blogs that's going to show you about more features and also use cases here from the DevNet. I really love this. This just gives me a lot of information, and it's really great bedtime reading, right? And this one only takes 4 minutes, right? And so for instance here, using orchestration with the MSO. Well, I pretty much already talked about this, but yeah, Unified GUI for your multi-site orchestrator and network assurance. Network assurance, again, incredibly important. It validates and verifies that the configuration has not changed, right? Or that you accept any changes that are needed. That's really the big thing. We already talked about centralization, unified GUI, and then yeah, proactive analysis through NDL. Or I'm sorry, NDI. All right, folks. So I wish I could go more in depth, right? But that's about all the time we've got. So what I wanted to do here really quick, folks, where do we go from here? Right? So I threw a lot of stuff at you. I want to make sure that you feel comfortable moving forward with this information. So the first thing is go ahead and take a look at the ACI learning path on Cisco U. We do talk about the 6.0.2 and .3 feature updates for the application policy infrastructure controller and the ACI fabric. We also have labs and sandboxes in the DevNet that I showed you. If you're going to Cisco Live, unfortunately this year I will not be going. But there are Cisco Live sessions, tons of them on ACI. But my favorite next step would be to join either community forums or look at partner training. As Sunset Learning, we are a platinum learning partner with Cisco Systems. You can go to sunsetlearning.com here, and let me go ahead and throw that here into the chat window. Okay, so if we go to sunsetlearning.com, one of the things, here's our splash page. Welcome to Sunset. Now, if we click in the top right-hand corner here, where we can click on find courses. As you can see, we have a large plethora of classes here. One of the things that you can do is you can go here and just filter on data center, and we apply filter. Here is some of our courses here, like DCACI. We also have time and dates, right? And you can enroll right now. With that being said, folks, I'm going to stop sharing here. If we go back to the slideshow, my next slide here is I've got an exclusive opportunity for everybody who stuck this out with us, right? Are you ready for your CCNP data center? I got mine, I don't even remember when. But I am CCNP data center and cloud certified. What we're going to do is we're going to give you everything you need to prep for those certification tests. With that said, what we can do here is we've got a kit. We got Cisco led training, or excuse me, in expert led training, 90-day access to our on demand platform. We're going to cover Cisco, ACI, Nexus, UCS, automation. Also, we've got hands on labs, we've got interactive stuff for you to do, and then all this courseware and also, we do have recordings. So if you do miss a class and you're enrolled, if you miss a class for any reason, we got you covered. So with that being said, folks, thank you so much for your time, your energy, your patience. Thank you very much for joining us today. My name, again, is John Gardner from Sunset Learning Institute. Please let us know if you have any questions. Otherwise, we hope to see you soon.
If you like this video, don't forget to subscribe and click on the notification icon to get notified whenever we upload new content.